Our fourth couple celebrate the brilliant women of the Talmud and the Talmudic academies. And our fifth couple celebrate the modern female woman who continues to blaze new trails and upon whose shoulders we stand. So I want to begin by sharing with you a poem to set our tone tonight by Merle Feld. And the poem is called We All Stood Together. And it goes like this. My brother and I were at Sinai. He kept a journal of what he saw, of what he heard, of what it all meant to him. I wish I had such a record of what happened to me there. It seems like every time I want to write, I can't. I'm always holding a baby, one of my own or one for a friend. Always holding a baby, so my hands are never free to write things down. And then as time passes, the particulars, the hard data, the who, what, when, where, why, they slip away from me. And all I'm left with is the feeling. But feelings are just sounds, the vowel barking of a mute. My brother is so sure of what he heard. After all, he's got a record of it. Consonant after consonant after consonant. If we remembered it together, we could recreate holy time. Sparks flying. So, by taking on the perspective of a Jewish woman at Mount Sinai, Merle Feld explains why women are not represented in our traditional telling of the Exodus. Oh, did I just lose you all? Does everyone still see and hear me?
Yep.
Okay, good. The woman in the poem explains that her brother was able to make himself a part of the narrative by writing down his perspective on the extraordinary things they witnessed and experienced. But she wasn't able to do so because, as she says, it seems like every time I want to write, I can't. I'm always holding a baby. While the women of this generation saved the Jewish people by continuing to raise children, there's a certain irony in the fact that this role also prevented them from inserting their own voices into the record of one of the most vital moments of our own history. In the story of the Exodus, like in many of the central parts of the Torah and Jewish tradition, the role of women is no less important than the role of men, but it happens to be minimized. This highlights the fact that women were unable, for a variety of reasons, to record their contributions. People tend to say that victors decide history. The only people able to determine how history is ultimately written are those who have the means to pass on their perspectives. Unfortunately, even within groups we see as victors, there are still those whose perspectives are disregarded. Jewish history is full of extraordinary women. But because women have not always had the ability to tell their own stories, they are often excluded. In order to discover our role within the stories that make up so much of our faith, Jewish women must sometimes look deeper within the text than their male counterparts. There's no doubt in my mind that if we attempt to see from the perspectives of our foremothers as well as our forefathers, we can create a narrative that ultimately teaches us more about our history and our values. To the amazing men who have joined us this evening, and we see you, we say to you and to all of you women here, as we prepare to celebrate Passover, let's attempt to reveal the contributions of the many unnamed women who sang on the shores of the Red Sea and seek out perhaps a new place for ourselves within the Jewish text. I want to thank my fabulous colleagues, Rabbi Shana Mackler, Lisa Silver, Rabbi Jessica Schimberg, Julie Greenberg, Cantor Tracy Fishbein, Cantor Sarah Levine, Rabbi Daniela Pressner, and our special musical guest, all the way from Seattle, Washington, and now I sound like Saturday Night Live, the very talented Hava Morel. Now let's begin telling the story. Hava.
Thank you so much, Rabbi, and everyone for being here and showing up. It's part of the community. It's such an important thing that we're doing just to be here and show our faces to each other. So even though I was just spotlighted, if you would want to override the spotlight and put it on gallery so that you can see each other, because just we've learned in this past year how important a glance is, a smile, just to see a face of another human being. So I'm going to welcome you to lean your face in closer to your camera. This is just a little thing that happens. The closer you get, and you can see other people's faces getting closer, and all of a sudden, the brain responds as if we're like right face to face. And it's a beautiful moment of connection. So just give each other a smile. This is the quickest way to spread something. We've learned about preventing the spread of viruses, but even more fast than a virus can spread is that loving connection can spread like this over the whole country. I mean, I'm far, far away from you, but we're right here together. So in the words of another poet, my dear friend who just left this earth, but is still very much in our hearts, Stacy Sizik Robinson, one day sent me these beautiful words of welcoming and connection. She connected it to our Baruch prayer, but I'm going to sing it today as a blessing for all of us. So whatever blessing is in your heart right now, you can let it rise to the surface. Send it out with a smile, with a loving glance to each other, to the community, to us. Do 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 Come, all of you, come, all of us, and spread some love and kindness. Come, all of you, come, all of us, and spread some love and kindness. Spread it with the rising sun, spread it in a river of blessings, spread it in this moment now and every now to come. Spread it with the rising sun, spread it in a river of blessings, spread it in this moment now and every now to come. Come, all of you, come, all of us, and spread some love and kindness. Come, all of you, come, all of us, and spread some love and kindness. Every night when we sing the Hashki Venu prayer, we ask that a sukkah of peace be spread over us. So let's use our blessings now to spread a sukkah of peace over ourselves. We can weave them together and cover ourselves in this beautiful peace. May we be blessed under the wings of divine compassion. And may we be safe in the embrace of everlasting love.
Log into
Come, all of you, come, all of us, and spread some love and kindness. Come, all of you, come, all of us, and spread some love and kindness. Now, please welcome with me my dear friend and sister, Julie.
Thank you so much, Hava. Beautiful as always. And welcome to everybody here tonight. You know, uh, between politics and the pandemic and just sort of the state of affairs in our country this year, the Exodus narrative this year resonates more, I think, and differently, certainly. The novelty and the disorientation and the terror sometimes of an unknown landscape, and when and how will it end. We've celebrated miracles this year, and we have also found ourselves, I think it's safe to say, searching for kind of a lost sense of agency. And so when Rabbi Lori asked me to consider a woman from Torah to explore and uphold tonight, I thought not of Miriam, but certainly of the Exodus, and the daughters of Zelophehad just really bubbled up to the top for me. And that may seem like a little bit of a cheat because it's 5 women, not one, and they are named. Actually, the sisters are named in Torah, and at the end of my offering, I would like for us all to recite their names because I think we don't often get to. But for now, we think of them as one unit, and I would love for us to kind of conjure up an image of them before we say their names. And so if you'll indulge me in a little guided imagery, and maybe you want to close your eyes if you're comfortable with that, and take a few centering breaths, which always helps when we're switching gears. So inhale if you wish, and exhale. And maybe one more in slowly and out. And try and picture these women, daughters, certainly, of a man, and daughters of the wilderness. And what must it have been like for them traveling for so long, Bamidbar, excuse me, and soon to enter the promised land, but without the company or protection of their father. And so maybe they are considering their fate, and they're consulting each other, or life in captivity this year, maybe they're confounding each other, or they're consoling one another. Maybe they're close, maybe they're competitive, maybe they look alike, or maybe they look different. But ultimately, I imagine that they're summoning their courage somehow to petition, inevitably, men, right? To be their advocates for what they consider to be, I think, rightfully theirs. And if you have a kind of good picture of them now in your mind, I also really love to play with images. It's a night of song for sure to be celebrated, but also really helpful when we can look at these pictures that we either draw for ourselves or that others have drawn for us. So I'm going to now share my screen and share with you just a few images throughout time of what other people have imagined. So here's sort of a, to me, very stereotypical biblical image, if it'll pull up here. Hang on. Oops. Hang on. That's not the one. That's the last one. Hang on. There we go. Try again. Well, why is that? There we go. Okay. So yeah, lean into your cameras a little there too and see what's happening here. There's Moses, the tent of meeting, and makes sense, right, that they'd probably pick a representative. And I love the light and the posturing, hands obviously here indicating that she's speaking for the rest, right? Similarly, but without so many other men around, this is even more. Look at Moses. I'm wondering what's happening with him. What is he thinking? Or maybe your image is in color and it's more fluid and flowy or linear, or this is the youngest representation here of a daughter of Zelophehad that I have seen. They weren't, I mean, they were married. That doesn't mean they weren't young, right? I like this just to play on the original one, but someone's modernized that with some color to remind us it was in color. And I like this because now the women are in color and that feels good and maybe appropriate. No faces, right? Names, but no faces. So anyway, that's a fun little, I'm going to stop sharing now for a second. We'll return one last time in a minute. But the important part is that this petition to me was not financial or particularly feminist, right? They had to decide, well, what's the best way for us to get our argument across, or what's the best way we can stand a chance here. And so whomever it was, whichever sister it was who stepped forward or that they elected, said, why should our father's name disappear from his clan because he had no son? So they're still choosing to focus on the father, right? They don't focus on themselves. And I think that was smart. I think that was wise. And we should, to Rabbi Lori's point, celebrate the men here tonight and of this story. Grateful to Moses that he heard their argument and chose. He had a choice and he chose to take it to God. And, you know, it's my 21st century eyes can't help but wonder, you know, Moses is not up for re-election, so to speak, right? He's at the very tail end here. And I think the timing was good for them too, that he maybe felt like he could push this forward for them. So I just remain really grateful that this happened. No glass ceilings per se in the wilderness, and yet this was a glass ceiling moment for all of us. God heard the argument through Moses and agreed that their argument was just, and then laid out an entire plan for hereditary inheritance. It's a pretty remarkable, brief but remarkable story. And so let us say their names, and I'll return to the pictures just one more time, because my favorite image, as many of you who know me well might guess, is created by children. And this is how they chose to represent them, holding hands, united together in this way. And you can see in English, we have shared the names. So I'll recite and you may reply. Let us lift up the name of Tirza. Doesn't matter if you're muted. And Noah.
Noah.
Hagla. Machla. And Milcah.
Milka.
And as we do that, needless to say, let us resolve to lift each other up. We know as women that we can be individually strong, but we are certainly in better company and more effective when we work together. And so let's celebrate what we each bring to the table or the tent of meeting as we seek to come out of this wilderness eventually and regain a sense of agency and be more willing to advocate for each other. And thank you very much for the opportunity to reflect on one of my very favorite stories.
Lisa.
Okay. Well, the phrase B'Tselem Elohim occurs very early in the book of Genesis, and it's a reminder that we are all equal in the eyes of God. We are made in the image of God, each one of us, B'Tselem Elohim. We are made in the image of God, each one of us, B'Tselem Elohim. In every person's heart, there is a divine spark, he and she and they, and you and I. All beings of the earth are of infinite worth, all equal in the eyes of Adonai. We are made in the image of God, each one of us, B'Tselem Elohim. We are made in the image of God, each one of us, B'Tselem Elohim. Each one of us, B'Tselem Elohim.
My mom leads the Seder at my house. And growing up, she always told me a story of my grandfather, how he would always go to shul by himself, but come home with a stranger nearly every Shabbos. Pesach was no different. So this tune of Halach Ma'anya, where we are beginning to tell the story during the Seder, and the meaning of this piece is, come whoever is hungry, and if you need a place, this is, we're here. So Halach ma'anya di achalu hafana de'ara de'Mitzrayim de'ara de'Mitzrayim kol dichpin yetei v'yechul kol ditzrich yetei v'yitzach Hashatacha Lashana Haba Be'arad Yisrael Hashatacha Lashana Haba B'nei Chorin B'nei Chorin.
Rabba Daniela.
So I have recently been reading Ariel Berger's Witness, which is Lessons from Elie Wiesel's Classroom. And one of the images that he brings up is this sculptor who has in mind what he wants to sculpt and begins sculpting, but nobody else has in mind what that looks like. And the sculpting begins, and sometimes as the artist sculpts, the image changes over time, and sometimes it stays the same. But the point is really that it's this long journey of creation that keeps on happening. And in many ways, when I think about the women throughout history, I see them as this long moment of creation where things keep folding and then unfolding and then refolding and then coming back again to kind of see the story anew. And so today I wanted to share a little bit about Abigail, who is a woman that we see in the book of Samuel 1, Shmuel. And she is known for a few things, but it's really interesting that she's very hardly mentioned in the Nach itself. And so what I'm going to do is share a few texts, show you where she's mentioned and how she's mentioned, and then talk a little bit about what she means to me. And I'm going to note the time. I'm very punctual. Okay. So I'm going to share my screen. And what we're going to look at first is that she is known as a prophetess. She's one of the few women. There are 7 women who are listed as prophetesses, and she's one of them in the Talmud. And the list is Sarah, Miriam, Devorah, Hannah, Abigail, Huldah, and Esther. And it's interesting to see how women who have such small, in many ways, roles in terms of what we see in the Tanakh, end up having such huge roles in the Gemara in the 2nd through 5th centuries. This kind of re-engagement with these women, and not just women, but a number of people who are then seen later on. So in the book of Samuel, we see it says Shem Ha'ish Naval v'Shem Ishto Avigail, that the man's name is Naval and the woman's name is Abigail. They're married. V'ha'isha tovat sechel, she is very intelligent. V'yefat toar, she's beautiful. She seems to have it all. V'ha'ish kashe, he's hard. V'ra, and mean. Mehalim v'hu kalbi. Okay, so we know that he is hard and difficult, and some people compare him to the word kelev, which is dog, like he acts like a dog. He's just kind of out of control, and they're married. So the Tanakh presents us with this beautiful foil of this woman who's incredibly strong and beautiful and bright, and this man who really doesn't have very much going for him. And of course, you could wonder what exactly is happening between the two. But I think what I love is how much we can learn from even those who are in compromised situations. And it was clear that she was. And so David and Naval, David at the time was seated to be the king. Naval they were not getting along, and Naval sends men up to David, and David sends men up to Naval, and Naval pretends like he has no idea who these people are, and in doing so leads David to want to go into war. And it comes to Abigail, this information comes to Abigail, and she has to figure out what to do. And I think she really, to me, speaks a lot about what do we do when we're in these moments where some information was dropped on us and we need to figure out exactly what we need to do. Whether we agree with what was done, whether we disagree with what was done, we have to figure out how we're going to move forward as leaders. And I think as a female leader, she really stands out to me because she was filled with integrity, but also filled with this deep desire to be truthful after the fact. And so she quickly gets together loaves of bread and wine and sheep and corn, and she puts everything together. So first of all, she reacts quickly. She doesn't waste time. And second of all, she tells the men who are helping her, please go ahead of me. But she also doesn't just send them as servants. She says, I'll follow you. I'll be with you on this journey. And I think, oftentimes when we see women in the Bible, they are not always as active as we might want. But here's a case of a woman who's saying, I'm directing you, I'm telling you what to do, but I'm also telling you that I'm going to be here with you on this journey. And this is my favorite part. That's kind of what we see in the Torah. It goes back and forth in Nach, it goes back and forth. And she has this conversation with David, trying to convince him that he should not go and attack Naval. And she does end up convincing him. But what I think is most amazing is what happens in the Talmud. And what the Talmud does is welcomes us into a conversation between Abigail and David. And it's basically a conversation of intellect. So she says one thing, and then he one-ups her with his intellect. And then she says another thing with her intellect, and then he says another thing with his. And this back and forth very much reflects like the ebb and flow of the Talmud in general, but it also reflects this ebb and flow of how we learn together as Jews, where we're always trying to sharpen the other's knife. We're always trying to help the other move up in their intelligence, in their strength, in whatever it is that they want to move forward with. And to me, this is one of the most powerful examples of a woman, is that it's not just about who you are or who you want to become, but it's really about how do we enrich and strengthen the lives of all those around us. And so when I think about her, I read an article once a very long time ago that spoke about the difference between mentors and promoters, and that everyone needs both. Everyone needs a mentor, of course, people that we can call and look to, but also that we all need promoters. We all need people who are going to push us out there and support us and bring us up to a higher level of what we can be, what we ought to be. And so for me, Abigail does just that with David. You know, she pushes him to be more of who he can be in a very, very direct and honest way. And so that's why she stands out to me as a leader. And I very much hope that, you know, as I sculpt my future as a leader and as all of us help sculpt each other's futures as leaders, that we really are able to take the time to consider what is the other person's sculpture all about and how can I help enrich and strengthen their sculpture as well.
Yeah, Sher Kohech, Rabba Daniela. Thank you so much. That was such a beautiful teaching and so meaningful. Thank you. So tonight I have a song about another one of the female prophetesses, and this one is Miriam. And as some of you know, it has become a more modern tradition that on our Seder tables we include not only an Elijah's cup, but we include a Miriam's cup as well. And rather than fill our Miriam's cup with wine, as we would for Elijah, we fill it with water. And that is because throughout the Torah, Miriam is associated with a well as being the person who brings sustenance in the form of water to the Israelites as they travel on their journey. And we know that the well was a source of gathering for the women in the community. It was their time to talk and to come together and to be together and to spread hope. And Debbie Friedman of blessed memory, another modern day prophet perhaps, she was one of the first in Jewish music to give voice to the women in the Torah and to the women in our tradition. And a lot of you know one of her most famous songs, "And the women dancing with their timbrels," Miriam's song. We know and love it. But she actually had another song about Miriam and about the story of Miriam, not only in the Exodus story, but beyond that as well. And it's called "The Water in the Well." It has a very catchy chorus that I hope that you will sing along whenever you hear it. Oh, the water in the well and the healing in the well, the women and the water and the hope that's in the well. Oh, the water in the well and the healing in the well, the women and the water and the hope that's in the well. When the world was created, there was heaven and dry land, and all the waters gathered upon hearing God's command. There was a bit of water that was left, or so they tell. That was the water that became the water from the well. Oh, the water in the well and the healing in the well, the women and the water and the hope that's in the well. Oh, the water in the well and the healing in the well, the women and the water and the hope that's in the well. It was in Miriam's honor that the first well came to be, to celebrate her music, her dance and prophecy. The people came to Miriam when their spirits rose and fell. She nourished all their visions with the water from the well. Oh, the water in the well and the healing in the well, the women and the water and the hope that's in the well. Oh, the water in the well and the healing in the well, the women and the water and the hope that's in the well. Spring up a well, the 12 tribes sang, and the rushing waters flowed. High as pillars into rivers, to the oceans they would go. Surrounded by the trees and fruit so rich and bountiful, the Israelites Moses shed his tears. And God said, Moses, touch this rock and water will appear. Well, Moses raised his staff in anger, and upon the rock it fell. And out came springs of water. It was water from the well. Oh, the water in the well and the healing in the well. The women and the water and the hope that's in the well. Oh, the water in the well and the healing in the well. The women and the water and the hope that's in the well. For the memory of the women, for the memory of the well, for the ones who came before us, their stories we must tell. We are searching for the water where we wander, where we dwell. For Miriam and all of us who thirst to find the well. Last time, sing it with me. Oh, the water in the well and the healing in the well. The women and the water and the hope that's in the well. Oh, the water in the well and the healing in the well. The women and the water and the hope that's in the well.
Oh, wow. Cantor, you are speaking my language with the Debbie Friedman song. I love it so much. And it's just it's a cool thing because this is part of our celebration of Pesach, is to imagine what it would be like to really be there and to be, to be experiencing the Exodus, all of the hardships, the promise, the opportunity, the transition from slavery to freedom, as if it were happening to us in our generation. And we are having a generational experience too, that, it's something that's common between everyone right now. The people who dwell on earth at this moment are having kind of a mutual experience. So we know what it's like to have a generational transformation. And one of Debbie Friedman's little proteges wrote this song about it. Her name is Alana Arian, and her mom was best friends with Debbie Friedman. And so when she was a little girl, she was influenced directly by the music and the presence of Debbie Friedman's her writing and her inspiration. And so I'm going to sing this song dedicated to the memory of Debbie Friedman, all of the women who came before us, and the women who are coming after, our daughters. B'chol dor v'dor chayav adam lirot et atzmo ke'ilu hu yatsa mimitzrayim. B'chol dor v'dor chayav adam lirot et atzmo ke'ilu hu yatsa mimitzrayim, yatsa mimitzrayim, yatsa mimitzrayim, yatsa mimitzrayim. Can you picture yourself crossing through and wandering the desert? Do you feel the wind support you as you go? Do you hear the cries of those left behind, still hoping for tomorrow? Do you fear the mountain you still have to climb? B'chol dor v'dor chayav adam lirot et atzmo ke'ilu hu yatsa mimitzrayim, 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 yatsa mimitzrayim.
Rabbi Schimberg.
Wow. Holy wow. Just to be here is a gift. And, I prepared my 7 minutes and I've been so moved by what I have experienced just being here. And so I think what I'll do is I'll start by bringing forth this third cup. Each cup speaks to a different way in which God did for us during the story of the Exodus. And the third cup is a cup that growing up, I think we might have skipped, because it kind of comes in a place where you're trying to speed things up so that you can get through the whole Seder. It wasn't until I went to Jerusalem and was invited by one of my teachers at Pardes to come to her Seder, and I was so excited. And it started with Mincha. So it started around 4:30 in the afternoon. And I walked home. I finally left and walked home as the sun was rising on the next day. So I finally had that Seder experience. But growing up, my Seder experience started like this. I don't know if you can see this, but this is the Mayan Haggadah. And in the front of this, it says, "To our dearest granddaughter, Jessica Kim, all of our love, Grandma and Grandpa Marks, March 30th, 1966. So now you know I was born in 1965. And I then went into a book. You may or may not know that I have just in the last year, I've now been here an entire year as of the 20th of March. I just moved to Nashville to marry my beloved and to become a part of this community. And I spent most of my life, though I was born in New York, most of my life in Columbus, Ohio, where my mom, of blessed memory, served twice. She wanted it to be known twice, because in this book, which is called the Passover Anthology, it's a JPS publication, but this is the 1960 version. Many of you might have a later edition of this book. And she wrote at the beginning, she wrote, "Orleen Marks Schimberg, 1980, from my sisterhood board during my first term as president." She served later as a co-president with me of our sisterhood. And I went through this book today, and there wasn't a single woman who had written in this anthology, with the exception of one woman who wrote a poem, and then a whole bunch of women who contributed recipes. So this kind of reminds me of my grandmother's Passover Seder, and moving forward into my mom's experience of Passover. And I pulled down, as Chava was singing, this picture of little, I don't know if you can see this, little Jessica and my mom at a Passover Seder. We always posed for a picture before the Seder, as probably many of you did. And I think about these two women whose experience of Passover was in the kitchen, was like the poem that Rabbi Lori read to us at the beginning of, being busy with things that needed to be done to make things happen. And so then I pulled off of my shelf, I'm a Haggadah nut, the Women's Seder, that was created by E.M. Bronner, and Naomi. That she created it herself, but she worked with some Israeli women. Anyway, it has a fabulous introduction about what they did as they created this first Seder in 76 or 74. and they wanted to use a name for the divine in their Haggadah that was different from Adonai. And so what did they do? They were in Haifa. They called the women in Jerusalem, those very few women who were in those first classes at HUC, and they asked them, what do you call God? And the answer came back, Shekhinah, like the divine indwelling presence. This is what we call the divine. So then I pulled out this, which is the Mayan Haggadah, which was my inspiration. So as I came into this world, into my professional life, I'm a recovering litigator. So I came into practicing law when we were still trying to look like men. We wore suits, we had big shoulder pads, and we tried to make ourselves big, kind of like the daughters of Zelophehad were trying to do, to make themselves appear in whatever way they needed to appear to appeal to the men of the court. And it was through the Mayan Haggadah that I created with my sisterhood, the one that I led with my mother, a very first draft of a Haggadah Shel Pesach, a telling of Passover from a feminist perspective. And this was, for me, the beginning of my desire to uncover all of the women who are not spoken about in Torah and Talmud. And yes, there are few in those places. So the woman that I chose for tonight is a woman that you may say when you hear her name, who? Because even people who are fairly learned, when somebody says Serach or Serach bat Asher, I mean, at least that gives you some context, because most of us have heard of Asher, one of the sons of Jacob. Most of us don't really know Serach and who she is. So I want to share my screen. And Lori, you're going to have to give me the yank, because I am one of those people who, unlike
Rabbi, I'm going to give you say 2 minutes.
Okay.
Okay.
So I'm going to skip then from here. Whoops. And I'm going to go right to her. So how will you know Serach? Well, she's mentioned 3 times in Tanakh, which is already pretty substantial. She's mentioned in lists of genealogy, and she's kind of a mystical feature. She comes to us, even though she's mentioned 3 times in Tanakh, she very much comes alive in our Aggadic tradition, our storied tradition. And she is said to have gone down into Mitzrayim. And we know that our people were in Mitzrayim for about 400 years. She's also noted as coming out of Mitzrayim. In fact, one of the great stories is that, you know, how we told, as we were coming out of Mitzrayim, we were told that we had promised Joseph that we would take his bones with us when we left Mitzrayim. And Serach is the one who is able to find the bones, according to Midrash. And in Midrash, she's also among a very small number of people, a couple of handfuls of people who transition directly from life to Gan Eden, to that which is beyond, without dying. So she's also this kind of mythic figure, much the way that Eliyahu is a mythic figure for us. She's strong and she's gentle. She's forgotten and remembered. She's a truth teller. One of the ways in which we also know her is that she is the one who, when the brothers go to tell their father that Joseph is not dead, she's the one who just plays him a song so that he can hear that his son, his beloved Yosef, is not dead. She comes in many shapes and sizes. To me, that is so much like who we are. And I feel that she is a representative of us. So that when we talk about coming out of the narrowness, coming out of this narrow space into redemption, she strikes me as a beautiful person, a beautiful figure to teach us that we are all in this story and that all of our maternal and paternal ancestors, the women in our lives, are part of this story as well.
Thank you, Rabbi, so much. Miss Lisa.
You know, I'm learning a lot of really interesting things this evening. It's going to spark me into finding out more about all these people that I really didn't know very much about. And I just want to say really quickly, my apologies in advance. My cat, who has been sleeping all day, just now found his way into this room, and his favorite thing to do is to knock over everything. So, you know, if everything crashes, you'll know to blame it on my cat. But I'm going to try to make it through this song. It is about the story of Deborah, the prophet. She was mentioned in the book of Judges, and she's the only female judge who's mentioned in the Bible. This is a story song written again by Debbie Friedman, who really is just the master of all these wonderful story songs. So this is Devorah's song. Arise, arise, Devorah, arise, and sing a song. Arise, Devorah, uri, davari, sheer. Devorah the prophet was a judge in Israel. She sat beneath her palm tree on a hill, and the people came from everywhere just to hear her judgments, honest and fair. Deborah the prophet, Deborah, a mother in Israel. Arise, Deborah, arise, and sing a song. Arise, Deborah, uri, davari, sheer. Deborah the prophet was courageous, strong, and wise. For people lived in peace for 40 years. And the people came from everywhere just to hear her judgments, honest and fair. Deborah the prophet, Deborah, a mother in Israel. Arise, Deborah, arise, and sing a song. Arise, Deborah, uri, davari, sheer. The Deborah the prophet, a woman of fire, a torch in hand. She led the Israelites to victory. Barak said, Deborah, I cannot fight unless you are standing right by my side. Deborah the prophet, Deborah, a mother in Israel. Arise, Deborah, arise, and sing a song. Arise, Deborah, uri, davari, sheer. Arise, Deborah, arise, and sing a song. Arise, Deborah, uri, davari, sheer. Uri, davari, sheer. I made it through. The cat didn't knock anything over. Phew.
Oh man, Cantor, that was so amazing. Another beautiful song by the great Debbie Friedman, and another beautiful character come to life through the words of a prophet. You know, it's the new prophets writing about the old prophets of old. And another prophet who comes to mind in that same tradition is Julie Silver, one of my great mentors from camp. And she took this idea of how each of us lifts up the other and how the combination of all our efforts lifts up everyone. And she says that the source of that is holiness. The source of that is the divine. So when we wake up in the morning, even the small act of just getting out of bed can connect us with the act of going from slavery to freedom. It's a kind of a small symbol of that larger act. So she said that each of us, in our own freedom, in our own exploration of freedom, helps the others to rise as well. Who gives me these miracles? Who awakens me each day? Who breaks the chains of slavery and shows me the way? Who steadies my footsteps? Who opens up my eyes? Who lifts up the fallen that we all may rise? That we all may rise. 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 Who gives me these miracles? Who awakens me each day? Who breaks the chains of slavery and shows me the way? Who steadies my footsteps? Who opens up my eyes? Who lifts up the fallen that we all may rise? That we all may rise. That we all may rise. That we all may rise. That we all may rise.
That song, Chava, is beautiful and beautifully sung, and it's a perfect introduction to this next person. We'll fast forward through the centuries, and I chose this next woman to represent all of the women throughout history whose names we may not know, who changed lives and served communities, who learned and led with distinction, and upon whose shoulders we stand. While the 1935 ordination of Regina Jonas in Berlin, Germany, marked the first time in Jewish history that a woman was officially ordained a rabbi, and Sally Priesand in 1972, the first ordained by a seminary, some scholars considered Asenat Barzani, a 17th century Kurdish Jew, to be Judaism's first woman rabbi. Asenat Barzani lived in Mosul, Iraq, from 1590 to 1670. Her father, Rav Shmuel Barzani, was a renowned scholar and mystic and rabbi in Kurdistan who would travel from town to town, establishing yeshivot, academies for study. And when he was not traveling, he focused all his attention on educating his daughter. To enable Asenat to focus on her studies, he insisted she be sheltered and excused from the domestic work and social obligations of her contemporaries. She once wrote, "I never left the entrance to my house or went outside. I was like a princess of Israel. I grew up on the laps of scholars, anchored to my father of blessed memory. I was never taught any work, but sacred study to uphold. As it is said, and you shall recite it day and night." When Asenat was to marry his star student, Jacob ben Ibrahim Mizrahi, her father, realizing that marriage might force his daughter out of her role as a wise woman, even included the stipulation in her ketubah, her wedding contract, that she must never be troubled by housework, as not to distract from her learning and her teaching. When her husband became, I see a lot of you nodding. When her husband became the head of the yeshiva, Asenat also became a master teacher, even after becoming a mother. When her husband died at an early age, she then became the Rosh Yeshiva, the first woman to be dean and head teacher in a men's Talmudic academy in Jewish history. And since she had already been the student's teacher, the transition was natural and painless. And after her father's death, Asenat also took over many of his duties. In time, Asenat became known as the chief teacher of Torah in Kurdistan. She was called a ta'anit, which means a female Talmudic scholar. In fact, it is written that that term, ta'anit, the feminine form of Talmudic scholar, was coined especially for her. She had few surviving letters that we have intact, but they each demonstrate her impressive and thorough knowledge of Hebrew and Talmud and Torah in Midrash and Kabbalah, as well as praise that she received from her colleagues for her scholarly knowledge and grasp of Jewish law. In 1664, for example, Rabbi Pinchas Harari wrote in a letter, "Go kiss her hand, for she is your lady, and prostrate before her," while referring to her as master, rabbi, and teacher. There are numerous stories about her, most of which have been found in amulets, which allude to her supernatural powers. These include her ability to limit her childbearing to 2 children so that she could devote herself to her studies, and the ability to freeze an intruder in his tracks in order to prevent him from an impending assault, a feat achieved by loudly calling out holy names. Many women who were ill sought her out for her healing powers, and she was a poet and an expert on Jewish literature. She was truly the stuff of legends, and there are many mystical tales and Kurdish legends about the miracles she performed, such as the one described in a book called The Flock of Angels. After Rabbi Samuel had died, he often came to his daughter Asenat in dreams. He would reveal dangers to her and tell her how to ward them off, saving many lives. On one occasion, inspired by her father, she encouraged the Jews of Ahmadiyya in Kurdistan to celebrate Rosh Chodesh outdoors, despite the dangers from their enemies. As they proceeded with the celebration, there were shouts as they saw flames shoot up into the sky. Their synagogue had been set on fire. But since the congregation had been outdoors, no one had been inside it. At that very moment, Ta'anit Asenat whispered a secret name, one that she had learned from her father. The people saw a flock of angels descending onto the roof of the synagogue. The angels beat the flames out with their wings until every last spark had been put out. Then they rose up into the heavens like a flock of white doves and were gone. And when the smoke cleared, they saw that another miracle had taken place. The synagogue had not burned, nor was a single letter of any of the Torahs touched by the flames. And they were so grateful to Ta'anit Asenat that they renamed the synagogue after her, and the remains of that synagogue still stand today. Tradition has preserved many of the stories of Asenat Barzani. However, we do only have few of her words. Perhaps it's a testament to the poverty that prevented the preservation of her texts. But we do have that single letter that she wrote, whose poetry is lyrical. And in it, she beseeches the noble community to help fundraise for that yeshiva in order to preserve the legacy of learning and fulfill her purpose, to hold stable the earth by discernment, wisdom, and law. She wrote, "I'll speak for the learning and moan for its vanishing from my land, for the brilliant spark in a cloud of heaven hidden from my people." Knowing about Asenat gives hope, and she is a role model to young and older women who really treasure study and learning, even to the neglect of mundane housework. The intellectual life can be a true calling of women as well as men, and there is a long tradition of women who lived such an intellectual life in our world. Whether we call her Ta'anit Asenat Barzani or Rabbi Asenat Barzani, her legacy is empowering. As one scholar put it, Asenat demonstrated that Jewish women, even if they face obstacles such as unequal social status and poverty, can put aside the broom, break barriers and glass ceilings if they choose, and with confidence in themselves and their abilities, invest in learning and achieve greatness. So we'll lift a glass this Passover to honor Asenat and all of those who paved the way before us and upon whose shoulders we stand.
So traditionally the end of the Seder ends with this children's song, Haggadah. The lyrics are a metaphor for the Jewish people's struggle to find freedom. One after another verse, it's just more and more drama, and the story gets a little bit more crazy. So the final verse is then came the Holy One, blessed be he, and destroyed the angel of death that slew the slaughter, that killed the ox, that drank the water, that quenched the fire, that burned the stick, that beat the dog, that bit the cat, that ate the kid, that my Abba bought for two zuzim. Why this ends the Seder is a very good question. I looked to Rabbi Jonathan Sachs of blessed memory, and he said, for what we give our children on this night of nights is something more and greater than the bread of oppression and the taste of Jewish tears. It is a faith that in this world, with all its violence and cruelty, we can create moments of redemption, signals of transcendence, and acts of transfiguring grace. And for time purposes, I'm just going to show you the last verse. It is a very full piece in Aramaic, just to make it that much harder on kids. Why not? So, Va'ata kadosh baruch hu v'shachat l'malach hamavet v'shachat l'shochet v'shachat l'torah v'shata l'maya v'chava l'nura v'saraf l'chutra v'hika l'chava v'nashach l'shunra v'ochla l'gadya v'zavana b'bitrezu zechad gadya chad gadya.
We'll move to our fifth cup, which is the fifth cup of hope. And we'll tie it to Chad Gadya because Chad Gadya also talks about justice being done, that no matter the things that befall our people and that we must suffer through, there is divine justice and there should be justice in our world. And so knowing that, we'll take our fifth cup and bring it to today. And we'll honor someone whose diminutive stature did not keep this icon from being larger than life. Rabbi Lori and I thought it would be appropriate to honor this woman who sought and pursued equality and justice. Ruth Bader Ginsburg grew up acting as a camp rabbi, growing up, leading services and discussing Torah. But after the death of her beloved mother, Celia, Ruth Bader Ginsburg stopped feeling connected to Jewish ritual at 17 because of the absence of a minyan at her mother's shiva, as women were not counted. Even though there was a house full of women, no prayer was held because 10 men were not present. That restriction kept her from joining a synagogue for much of her life. But when Justice Ginsburg attended synagogue with her granddaughter and saw a female rabbi and a female cantor leading the service, she recognized the progress and reflected and lamented about what that could have meant for her growing up. The truth is, her impact, her passion for egalitarianism and equality made it possible for those two clergy women to stand together on the pulpit. Her unwavering pursuit of justice also made it possible for us to serve our holy congregations. RBG saw being a Jew as having a place in society in which you're always reminded you are an outsider, even when she, as a Supreme Court justice, was the ultimate insider. Ginsburg's mother, Celia, encouraged her to be independent and proud as a woman and as a Jew. Her mother kept a list of women of valor from Proverbs, Eshet Chayil, and Ginsburg, unsurprisingly, memorized the list of amazing women to aspire to be like. Her mother would also list heroes who were ambitious and wise and successful. Ruth drank deeply from these stories, learning them by heart. These women, she wrote, had a vision leading out of the darkness shrouding their world. They were women of action, prepared to defy authority to make their vision a reality bathed in the light of day. Professionally, she said, my heritage as a Jew and my occupation as a judge fit together symmetrically. I take pride in and draw strength from my heritage. As signs in my chambers attest, a large silver mezuzah on my doorpost, 3 artistic renditions of the command from Deuteronomy, Tzedek, Tzedek Tirdof, justice, justice shall you pursue. And she even wore it on her collar. Laws as protectors of the oppressed, the poor, the loner is evident in the work of my Jewish predecessors on the Supreme Court, she said. The biblical command, justice, justice, thou shalt pursue, is a strand that ties them together. But her passion for justice and a better world, based on her Jewish values, began at an early age. At 13, she wrote for her synagogue bulletin, One People. In it, she said, we must try hard to understand that for righteous people, hate and prejudice are neither good occupations nor fit companions. We are part of a world whose unity has almost been completely shattered. No one can feel free from danger and destruction until the many torn threads of civilization are bound together again. We cannot feel safer until every nation, regardless of weapons or power, will meet together in good faith, the people worthy of mutual association. Then can be a happy world, there can be a happy world, and there will be once again, when men create a strong bond towards one another, a bond unbreakable by a studied prejudice or a passing circumstance. A lifetime later, nearly 70 years, she again reflected on learning the lessons of the Shoah in an essay to the American Jewish community. She said, "We must learn from that dreadful past and strive to ensure against its repetition. In bad times and oppressive societies, our humanity should cause us to hold fast to our human decency, so that never in the service of political leaders will we administer laws that deny the humanity or the human dignity of others. I am a judge born, raised, and proud of being a Jew. The demand of justice runs through the entirety of Jewish tradition, and I hope in my years on the bench of the Supreme Court of the United States, I will have the strength and courage to remain constant in the service of that demand." In addition to being a valiant fighter for women and the LGBTQ community, she was an advocate for Jews in the law world. Having the Year of Our Lord removed from court-issued certificates, she also pushed the court not to hear cases on Yom Kippur. And when a Jewish soldier wanted to wear a kippah in the military, Ginsburg stood up for him in court, saying the declaration of his kippah as intolerable suggests a callous indifference to his religious faith. It took persistence and resilience, never accepting defeat and never stopping, but always looking toward and working toward a better future. It has been said, indeed, her dissents on the court were not cries of defeat. They were blueprints for the future. In striving to drain our world of prejudice and oppression, we must rely on measures of our own creation, upon the wisdom of our laws and the decency of our institutions, upon our reasoning minds and our feeling hearts. And she said, and as a constant spark to carry on upon our vivid memories of the evils we wish to banish from our world, in our long struggle for a more just world, our memories are among our most powerful resources. We've all probably heard by now all of her love of opera and music and the arts. We've heard about her tireless, relentless pursuit of equality, fairness, and justice in our world. In particular, for gender equality, as she put it, "I ask no favors for my sex. All I ask of our brethren is that they take their feet off our necks." She was kind, good-humored. She was a bubby, and she was grateful to those who helped her achieve and serve our country. She was filled with grace and compassion. RBG imagined the best of our country. She imagined the law that would be one that would protect all of our citizens and could be used as a document to function as our North Star guiding our moral future. And one quick final story. A sweet story was recounted from a Jewish preschool in Dallas, a class that decided to name their new class fish Ruth Bader Ginsburg in honor of Justice Ginsburg. And so they sent her a letter of tribute with a picture of the fish, and she wrote back a handwritten note on her Supreme Court stationery as follows: "Dear Beehive class, I loved your letter and I'm glad you named your fish after me. Cheers, RBG." She had a great sense of justice and a great sense of play. At a time when equality was not given to women, she fought for us with grace, humility, persistence, chutzpah, knowledge, and knowledge that of the law better than anyone else. She believed in hope and was an optimist. She believed in the power of incremental, sustainable change for the good. She believed in the power of friendship, intelligence, reason, and goodness. She believed in the benefit of turning a bit deaf in relationships, not to give in to anger, and not to pay attention to unkind words. She believed in the ever-widening inclusion of we the people and in tikkun olam. And she taught us to fight for the things you care about, but do so in a way that will lead others to join you. And above all, she taught us to be remembered as she would wish to be remembered, just as someone who did whatever she could with whatever limited talent she had to move society along in the direction we would like it for our children and our grandchildren. This humble account of the life well lived, informed by our concept of tikkun olam, calls on each of us to do what we can to renew our efforts to repair the world's tears. So to honor Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg of blessed memory, her iconic journey toward equality, we need to do our part in what she described as our long struggle for a more just world. So we will honor our 5th cup of wine and do so toward the future. May we do honor to her memory and to the memory of all of the women who struggled and fought for equality and justice.
Thank you, Rabbi Mackler. Yasher Kohech, it was beautiful. When I heard that we were going to be learning about Ruth Bader Ginsburg, I knew I needed to turn to some of the composers in our midst who are champions of social justice in the world of Jewish music. And for me, I think of Stacy Beyer, who is a member of this community, a friend to many who are here tonight. She wrote a wonderful song with her songwriting colleague, Sue Radner Horowitz. And it's a song that I've had in my head all weekend, and it was in my head today as I, thank goodness, received my 2nd COVID vaccine. And it is a song called There Is Hope. And I think it's just such a wonderful song. It echoes so much of what Ruth Bader Ginsburg stood for, and it echoes so much of what all of us have been striving for during this difficult year, trying so hard to keep our hope alive and to know that a better future is coming, particularly if we work for it. You sit by the phone and you're feeling alone while you wait for the call that will change everything. You sip your coffee, it's tasting bittersweet, not knowing what the next moment will bring. Then you face your fears and you dry your tears. Nothing gets you down for long, 'cause you've always known there is hope, there is love. If there's a God up above, let me heal, give me time with the ones that I love. Give me joy, give me strength, so I can face a new day. There is hope, there is hope, there is love. One second. You're lying awake 'cause there's so much at stake, and it's all rolling round and around in your head. You turn the light on, half of the night is gone. Wish you were dreaming, but you're worried instead. Then you realize that you're much too wise to let it get you down for long, 'cause you've always known there is hope, there is love. If there's a God up above, let me heal, give me time with the ones that I love. Give me joy, give me strength, that I can face a new day. There is hope, there is hope, there is love. There is hope, there is hope, there is love.
Thank you, Tracy. That is indeed a nice message of hope. So I know this isn't an official Seder, but it feels like every Passover experience should include a Dayenu. And a couple of years ago for our Women's Seder, Rabbi Lori, I don't remember if you asked me to write this or if I just took it upon myself to write this. I really don't remember, but I came up with this kind of new alternative version of Dayenu. So I know that you know the chorus, so sing along when you get to the chorus. For the chance to speak our mind and live our lives by our design, for opportunities we find. Dayenu, 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 Dayenu. For doctors, nurses, lawyers, teachers, chefs, and techno geeks and preachers, all of us who helps God creatures. Dayenu, 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 Dayenu. For travel and for exploration, precious higher education, and our righteous indignation. Dayenu, 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 Dayenu. For creativity and passion, art and music, fun and fashion, sensitivity, compassion. Dayenu, 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 Dayenu. For our female history, the wisdom and the mystery, and all things that are sistery. Dayenu, 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 Dayenu.
So Dayenu, that the rest of our Passover experience should be as lovely and uplifting and inspiring as this 90 minutes has been together. And before we conclude with one final song, and I'll turn it over to Lisa to introduce that piece in just a moment, I just want to thank once again all the amazing women that I get to serve the Nashville Jewish community with on this Zoom. Lisa and Julie and Daniela and Shayna and Tracy and Jessica and Sarah and Hava, who is our adopted community member this evening. We're so grateful. And I don't think I left anyone out. And thank you to all of you for just being incredible members of this really special Nashville Jewish community. And we hope that your Pesach is full of joy and matzah and more gefilte fish than you can stomach, and that we only know health and goodness going forward for the rest of this year and into the future. And may we say next year out of a pandemic and possibly even in Jerusalem. Lisa, I'll throw it back to you.
So thank you once again to Chava for joining us. It's always a pleasure to hear you. And I know that you have a friend, and it's a woman that some of us may or may not be familiar with, named Joni Leeds. And Chava, feel free to jump in when I'm done and add anything else you'd like to say. But Joni Leeds recently created a musical project called All the Ladies. And one of the songs on All the Ladies, Chava contributed the lead vocals to. And if you haven't had an opportunity to hear it, you should really look it up. There's also a beautiful animated video that goes along with it that's just delightful. And the very cool extra special thing that just happened is that this album, which Chava is a part, just won the Grammy for the best children's album last week. So that is just really super. And I turn it over to you, Chava.
Well, I just want to say it's not all the single ladies, right? Because that was already done.
No, not all the single ladies, but that keeps popping in my head whenever
I know, I can't help it. Okay, go ahead, Hava. Oh, you're muted, Hava. It wouldn't be Zoom without that.
It includes the single ladies as well as the non-single ladies. And it's just an honor to get to share this song with everyone here and to just tell you it was an album that was including only female artists, producers, engineers, and every single person who worked on it. So it's really changing the paradigm for the music industry. So this is called Glass Ceilings. From the moment you're born, little girl, you will hear, you're so pretty, you're so precious, aren't you a darling? From the moment you're born, little girl, made to think, a prince will come save me, forever be happy, just like the movies. I know you don't need a knight shining armor. It's true that you might need to work harder to prove that you are just as strong, and you can get along without glass slippers. Breaking glass ceilings, glass ceilings, glass ceilings. Breaking glass ceilings, glass ceilings, glass ceilings. From the moment you're born, little girl, you should be told, you're so clever, you're so inventive, aren't you expressive? From the moment you're born, little girl, you should be told, I love what you're up to, I know you can do it, you are a brave one. I know you don't need a knight shining armor. It's true that you might need to work harder to prove that you are just as strong, and you can get along without glass slippers. Breaking glass ceilings, glass ceilings, glass ceilings. Breaking glass ceilings, glass ceilings, glass ceilings. It doesn't matter what you're wearing or what you look like. Show them the power and belief you feel on the inside, and we'll break glass ceilings. Breaking glass ceilings, ooh, oh, oh, oh. Glass ceilings, glass ceilings. Breaking glass ceilings, glass ceilings, glass ceilings.
Chag Sameach, everyone. That was beautiful.